Okay, so good evening, everybody. What we want to do tonight is work through to get a bit of a deeper understanding about Purim. Right, that's our objective. So we used to think of Purim as we were in trouble, amazing, miraculous outcome, or even without a miracle, we got saved, and therefore we should celebrate. And there is truth to that. There's no question that that's an aspect of Purim. Right. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but any community, any Jewish community that was in a situation where there was some kind of danger or annihilation decree that then got saved could make its own, like Purim Koton, its own mini Purim. There were lots and lots of Jewish communities before World War II that had days in the calendar every year after that they would celebrate something that was supposed to be a pogrom and it didn't happen last minute, or there was meant to be an attack and something stopped it. And and there are communities all over the Jewish world that had such things. But the proof that that is not what Purim is all about is this. There's an ancient midrash, an ancient rabbinic source called the Yalkut Shimoni, and it says the following that sounds very shocking. It says that Asidin Hamodos Le'batal, which means there will come a time in the future where all the Jewish festivals will be gone, right? So Pesach will be gone. There won't be any Pesach left. Shavuos, Sukkot, right? Rosh Hashanah, all these big days in our calendar will be gone. Why will they be gone? Presumably we're talking after the Messianic era or the end of it or something, when the spiritual level will be so high that there'll be nothing these things can add. Something like that. However, carries on the Medrash, carries on the rabbis, Purim will remain. And it proves it from a line inside the Megillah itself, that Purim will not. Are you stopping it? What? We're going to reach a time in history where Rosh Hashanah can't lift us any higher. Pesach can't, but Purim is going to do that job. Purim will still have something to offer us even then. So that's a little bit of a staggering thought. By the way, Maimonides, the Rambam codifies this in a slightly different way. In the laws of reading the Megillah, the very last halacha, the last law he brings is this. He says, in the future, very paraphrasing this Medrash, but slightly differently, in the future, all the books of Tanakh, that is to say, all the biblical books, except the 5 books of the Torah, the prophecies of Yeshayahu, Navi, the prophet, Yechezkel, Jeremiah, all be gone. We won't be using them anymore. Again, presumably we won't have anything we can learn from them. However, Megillas Esther, the book that records the Purim story, that's going to be there. You think, what? It's a nice day, it's a lot of fun. It's great. It's a good event, but like, what is this that's going to outlast all the others, that has something to offer that nothing else in Judaism does? Right? That's an absolutely staggering insight. This means it's not just we were in trouble, we got saved, let's thank Hashem. There's something far more profound, far deeper happening in Purim. By the way, it's just that midrashic source that says Purim, there is an opinion, not you, everyone agrees Purim, one extra opinion says, and maybe also Yom Kippur. So, thank you. Right, so you got Purim, definitely, and possibly Yom Kippur. You think, are you crazy? Yom Kippur? Come on. And of course, this is all reflected in one of the best known teachings of the Arizal, the great master philosopher of Kabbalah, or teacher of Kabbalah in the 16th century, I think, who says Vitza Gloria says famously that when the Torah describes Yom Kippur, right, the Day of Atonement, it very often uses the plural, Yom Kippurim, a Day of Atonements. Why? Because there was more than one atonement service. But he points out the Torah is written without vowels. And that means that you have the possibility often of other ways of vowelizing the same words yields a level of depth of meaning. And you could read Yom Kippurim, a Day of Atonements, as Yom, a day, kaf, like Purim. This is almost like it's like embedding within the Torah some kind of hinted prophecy that in the future may come a day that is even greater than this. It wasn't in the Torah itself, but something will happen in history that Yom Kippur itself is like an echo of or groping towards. And that is not how we experience it, right? Yom Kippur, you're very, very seriously trying to change ourselves. We're in a holy place, maybe we're crying over things we did wrong. And Purim is fun. It's a lot of fun. We get in a costume, we go this, It's not, where's that extra dimension of this incredible thing that's going to be there in the future? What's going on? So that's what we have to work out and understand. By the way, that's the true joy. Happiness is not, you can have superficial happiness, like a lot of fun. And that's good. But Purim is dealing with a level of real joy that is way, way, way beyond all of that. And it's not something you can just superficially switch on. It's something the superficial fun is good, but there's something far, far, far deeper. And that's what we want to really get to. And by the way, it's the secret of all life, obviously, because if it's going to be there at the end of history, it's got to be about all of history. And that's what we want to really tap into and understand in our bit of time together. If you have any questions at any point, by the way, just feel free to raise your hands. If it's off topic, maybe I'll ask to leave it to the end. If it's something I'm saying is not clear or you don't agree with or you've got a question on, just feel free to raise your hands and say something. By the way, whenever you say that to a British audience, nobody's going to raise their hands and say anything anyway. So, But if you did want to, then feel free. Okay, so let's get to work. And let's understand this in the following way. By asking another question. Right? It's always good to ask as many questions as I can. That's the Jewish response to having a problem. A question is ask another one. So let's ask this. Why is Purim called Purim? Not a trick question. Any of you know the answer? Any of you know? Yeah, go on.
When I pick the dates, the lot.
Yeah. When Haman, who's the evil viceroy anti-Semitic viceroy who wants to kill all the Jews, before he proposes the plan to the king, what he does is he draws lots or uses some randomizing device to pick the day that the Jews will be killed, which was meant to be the 13th day of the month of Adar, right? The day before we celebrate as Purim. And he did it randomly using these lots or something. And the word in Persian for lot is Purim, Pur. And because of that, we call the day Purim. So what? Have you ever wondered, so why do we? That doesn't answer the question. If you had to pick a name, a title for this festival, you might say something like the day the Jews were saved, Yom HaYeshua, the day of salvation, or the day of Esther, right? Why would you name it after the lots that he used to decide the date that he killed the Jews? I'd say something slightly differently. If you were to talk to somebody who knows nothing about Judaism and give them like a 1-minute overview of every single major Jewish calendar date, just by describing it, you would naturally happen to use the word that is the English translation of the name we have in Hebrew. For example, if you were talking about Rosh Hashanah, you would obviously mention it's the beginning of the new year, right? The beginning of the year, that's what the name means. If you were talking about Yom Kippur, you would naturally happen to say it's a day of atonement, right? Which is what it means. Sukkot, you'd say we're in a sukkah. Tisha B'Av, you'd say is on the 9th of Av. Hanukkah, you'd say was the rededication of the temple. You would obviously use the word that happens to be the title because it's an obvious title. Not so Purim. You would talk for maybe an hour about it. In fact, not for the fact that McGinnon mentioned it, that's why it's called it. You wouldn't actually, it's not important, it doesn't seem to have any key role in the story. Let's suppose instead Haman had decided to kill the Jews on that day because it logistically worked out very well for him. Or it was his birthday, or who knows what. Would the story be different? Would we not have exactly the same problem? You had this evil anti-Semitic fellow rises up, wants to kill all the Jews, the final solution to the Jewish problem back in ancient Persia. Would we not still have had a queen who happened to be Jewish, who never revealed it to anybody, right? Would we not have all the events would still be the same events? The story would be the same story. The celebration would be the same celebration. So why are we calling it after something that seems to be irrelevant at the narrative level and irrelevant at the miracle level and play no significant role at all? More than that, if anything, it's a bit of an anti-Semitic title for the day. Because why did Haman pick lots? It plays no relevant role in the story. And the answer is because he said, you Jewish people stand at the core of your being for the idea that everything is meaningful. I, says Haman, stand at the core of my being for the idea that everything is meaningless. So let me really rub salt into your wounds. As I pick the day that's going to be the annihilation of all of you, I'll pick it in the most meaningless, random way. No significance except for lots. So why would we take something that has nothing to do with the story, there's an anti-Semitic ideology, and then bolt that on to the name and the title of the festival? What a strange thing to do. Imagine we did it with Hanukkah. You know, the Greek general had a favorite pet dog, so we're going to call the whole festival after him. It's like, that's what we're doing over here. What sort of thing is that? And this is where we need to get to work. This is, by the way, whenever you got good questions, it means that our current understanding is not good enough. Or we've opened a portal to a deeper understanding. It's not good enough, it's good, but we can now, because it doesn't explain this, we're now going for a deeper understanding of why did they name it this? What's really going on? They're poking all around, that the rabbis are showing us that there's much more going on over here than we realize. And that's what we're going to touch into at least some of it, try to tap into some of it. And let's do it this way. You know, I don't know if you know, a lot of people have a song they sing at the end of the Megillah, Shoshanas Yaakov, a song where we list the heroes and villains of the story. All right, so let's go through. Who are the main heroes of the story? Again, not a trick question. Esther, great. Yes, top of the list. Okay, who else? Esther, the queen who intervenes at the key moments and says she's Jewish, can you save the people? Right, who else? Mordechai, right, the Jewish leader who had actually raised her as a child, who according to some opinions, they were even married. That's not so, maybe. But one way or another, Mordechai is the Jewish leader who persuades her to go and step forward, right? Anyone else? Who else would be in the good list? Not so simple, right? But presumably it's others that we list a man who at the key moment intervenes and says, his name's Harvona, that Haman had built gallows to hang Mordechai, the Jew, on, and he ends up getting hanged on them. Okay, and you want to put God in that list as well, I guess. Doesn't need to be called a hero, but ultimately in control of things. Who would be in the villains list? Haman, obviously, right? Top of the list, you know. Anyone else get in the villains list? Big Sanhedrin, right? So there's in the first chapter, there's two people who plan to assassinate the king. Two of the guards, the royal guards, and or imperial guards. And Mordechai understands it, reports them to the king. Yeah, you put them in. Some people have different feelings about the Queen Vashti, the first queen who ends up getting killed, or at least deposed, presumably killed. And others, okay. Now, here's what you would not do. Okay, ready for this? Nobody would put Haman into the heroes list, right? You'd all be obviously right for that. Except, yes, you'd be right, but there'd also be one inadvertent sense in which unintentionally he ended up there. Let me be very clear. This is, oh, by the way, that reminds me of the other question, which we've got to talk about in a second as well. Don't worry, you don't need to get confused. I'm not about to tell you that Haman was a hero, right? But in an inadvertent sense, there is one sense in which he is. And by the way, this is reflected, which I'll come back to, in a very strange law around Purim that is incredibly famous. The law says a person is obligated to get drunk. The Gemara brings this. Now, normally in Judaism, we do not like getting drunk, right? You can't walk into the Beit HaMikdash drunk. You can't rule on a halachic thing drunk. Even if you just drunk a bit of a certain amount of wine, you can't lead the service in shul, and so on and so forth. The person should, always be able to be responsible for their behavior, etc. But on Purim, the Gemara says, a person is obligated to become intoxicated until they cannot distinguish between cursing Haman and blessing Mordechai. Do you know, that's so famous, by the way. It's an amazing thing. Like, you can meet a Jew who knows nothing about Judaism. It's like, I've heard of circumcision and Hanukkah and there's getting drunk on Purim. That's the one I'm strict about. It's like everyone. So the Gemara carries on. The Gemara tells a story of two of the great rabbis of the Talmudic era in Babylon, Rabbah and Rab Zera. Rabbah invited Rab Zera to a Purim party, and they were drinking. And the Gemara describes it as, come Rabbah. Rabbah got up for shachit Rab Zera, and he shechted Rab Zera, like shchita, like he killed him. Now, the next morning he wakes up and sees what he's done, and he brings him back to life. There's different ways to understand the Gemara. Some see it as slightly more metaphorical. Others say, no, he actually had access to some deep Kabbalistic, whatever exactly it is, wisdom of, he could literally bring it back to, whatever happened, something dramatic happened there. The next year, Rabbah says to Reb Zera, would you like to come to my Purim party again? And Reb Zera politely declines. He says, get miracles once, we're not doing this again. Some learn, there's different debates in the commentaries, did the Gemara put that there to say maybe we shouldn't get drunk after all? And it's actually a debate in the sources. What, are we supposed to get drunk? Is it better not to? Is it only for some people, not for others? And in the Shulchan Aruch and the Code of Jewish Law, you have different opinions. One opinion, the one that generally Ashkenazi Jews normally follow, the Ramah says you should have more than usual and go to sleep. Because when you're asleep, you can't tell the difference between cursing this one or blessing that one. Okay. But all of a sudden, everybody becomes very frum and very machmir. We want to go the strictest on this one. We're going all out. Okay, be that as it may. But let's ask conceptually, what possible spiritual value can there be in getting drunk that you cannot distinguish Haman and Mordechai? It's cursing him, blessing him. What possible, how? And we said, holiest day of the year, going to outlast all the other festivals. Even if we don't do it in practice, if one doesn't, right? But whether they do or don't is, what is the meaning of this? I just said something that sounded a bit like Haman inadvertently gets like, what is all this stuff? And here I want to get you, this is the point I want to bring out now. Why did I say Haman is definitely not a hero, but inadvertently somehow ends up being, for this simple reason? Because as we read the story, for those of you who are familiar and those not familiar, right, the 10 chapters of the Megillah, a very striking feature emerges that for the first 6 chapters, the majority of the Megillah, it's a story of incredible powerlessness. Almost every main player in the story has no power whatsoever. You start with who you'd think would be the most powerful, the creator of the universe, God himself. Obviously, he is the most powerful. But the shocking point of the Megillah, as some of you will know, is that the name Hashem does not appear. In fact, no name of God appears anywhere in the whole story, all 10 chapters. There cannot be a lot of religious books in the history of humanity that have no reference to any divinity in the entire book. This is one of them. There's actually one other biblical book that does it, but it's a metaphoric, it's not a narrative book. And that is your good homework. But if you ever want to impress anybody at the Purim table or anywhere else, your yeshiva bocha or sem girl, whatever it is, uncles, aunts, whoever it is, somebody there, you can ask them. There's 2 biblical books where God's name is not mentioned. What's the second one? Any of you know? It's Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs. Very good, yeah. So yeah, that's the other one. But that's not a narrative. There's no story. Here's a story where in the entire narrative, Hashem's name never appears, which means anything overt in the text means it's overt in the world. Anything that's hinted at in the text usually means it's not overt in the world. It's hinted at in the world. Okay? So if it's hinted at in the text, but God's name is not in the text, it means there was no point where you could look around and say, oh, this is a miracle. Oh, Hashem's doing something here. God is, so to speak, behaving like he's stepping back and not going to intervene. Okay, so who's the most powerful person then in the story? Ahasuerus, right? The king. Many believe he's Xerxes. Actually, in Persian, the name Xerxes is Hashirash. Makes a lot of sense. But whoever he is, in theory, he's got the whole power. He owns this empire. It's a pretty big empire, the largest empire at that point in history in the world. And yet, amazingly, in the first 6 chapters, he does not make a single decision by himself. Maybe half a little decision. He doesn't make decisions. In fact, when anyone pressures him, he basically capitulates. Right? Let's kill the first. What I do with the queen? She refuses to kill her, get rid of her. Fine, we do that. Then next, somebody else tells him how he should pick his new queen. Then somebody says, let's kill the Jews. Then let's restructure the economy. Then, in the meantime, let's come up with a new constitution so you cannot repeal laws. And all the stuff that's going on, he basically is pushed over every single time. In fact, in the opening scene, when he makes his opening party, he does it last, so ish for ish, to try to please everybody. You can't kind of get a more quintessential, fantastic, emblematic statement of that would define a modern democratic leader. Always pushing where the winds go. But that's good for a modern democratic leader. Try and please everybody, promise them this, lower taxes, do all that. But it's not great when you're supposed to be the head of an empire. That's not what emperors were meant to do in those days. They were meant to be strong. They were meant to protect everybody. They were meant to marshal the resources of the empire to do stuff. He doesn't do any of that. Not only that, in the opening chapter, it says that when he has this dilemma, it says, this is how the king would do things. He would go to Fnei Dedas, but then he'd call his legal team in, he'd call his media team in. He didn't make decisions. Okay, and not only that, at the key moment in the whole story, at the end of the 3rd chapter, you have Vayasar Melech es Tabata, the king takes the ring. Haman makes a proposal, let's kill all the Jews. He doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no. He takes off the ring that was the royal signet ring that you would use to sign laws into law, edicts into law, hands it over to Haman and says, you do whatever you want. At that moment, he's lost the ability to actually create laws. He's delegated it. He's not in charge. Queen Esther has even less power. She can't even get to the king unless she's summoned. She's just basically a puppet to stand on show. And Mordecai can't even get into the palace to talk to her. Everybody's frozen. There's only one person who's making decisions, and that's Haman. He's got the ring. He's in charge. He makes every key decision, especially because the rabbis tell us that the only other person who seems to make a decision is Memuchan is actually his other name. In those days, it was very common to have two names. Most of the characters in the Megillah do, because you had your name, kind of the palace name, and your private name. So he is making all the decisions. Literally every single major decision for 6 chapters of the story, he makes them all. He decides how to restructure the economy. He decides to get rid of the first queen. He decides to, pick another one. He's doing everything, kill the Jews, do this, do that, how to make the edicts, how to make the decrees. He's in charge. The ring is handed over to him. And amazingly enough, it's a bit like a controlled experiment in what happens if you hand the reins of history over to pure evil with no one able to get in its way. More than that, there's a hint, the rabbis tell us, that God's maneuvering in the story. The name Hashem never appears, right? So what's the hint that God's involved in the story? If the narrative, instead of calling King Achashverosh, if it doesn't say King Achashverosh, it just says the king, the hint is, yes, Achashverosh is acting, but behind the scenes, God is kind of nudging that bit. Or on a deeper level, God is intervening. You read on 2 levels, like many things in the Megillah. When it comes to handing the ring, it does not say Achashverosh handed the ring to Haman. It says, Vayosar HaMelech es tabatoi. The king handed the ring to Haman. As if to tell us, God himself is giving the reins of history to Haman, pure evil. What will happen if Hashem himself, so to speak, delegates history to him? That's it. We're not intervening. Run things the way you want to. Nobody can get in the way. And here's the amazing thing. We're so used to the end of the story that we tend not to focus on what was happening in the middle. But at the beginning of the 4th chapter, after the decree has gone out to annihilate, to destroy, to kill every single Jew, man, woman, child, on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and take all of their wealth away from them, right? This is decrees going up in the village. It is so tragic. And you can imagine, a poster goes up in the town, and you try to contact your friends in the nearby village. We've got the same poster. You get in contact with your cousins on the other side of the empire. You can't come here. We've got the same poster, the same law. There's nowhere to go. You start to think, should we mobilize and make a militia? With a bunch of sticks? What are you going to do? A few walkie-talkies? You got the Persian army can get involved. Forget it. The whole known world was the Persian Empire, except for Greece, who they were at war with, so you couldn't get there either. So you were stuck. There was no natural solution to this problem. Okay, so let's get the prophets, and is God going to do them? Prophecy's been cut off. There's no miraculous intervention. You're not going to get any supernatural solution. So 1 second, if there's no supernatural solution and there's no natural solution, then what are we going to do? And that's exactly how it's described at the beginning of the 4th chapter. In every place where the decree came, Eval Godol LaYehudim. Just hear these words. There was huge mourning taking place. Normally you mourn after somebody's died. But they all realized they're all going to die and there'll be no one to mourn for them, no one to sit shiver, if you like. So they mourned. They mourned their own loss while they were waiting for 11 months. It was 11 months to go. But you were a Jew walking down the street, somebody's going like this to you, You want to sell a belonging, everyone laughs at you. We're going to come and take it for you in a few months' time. Why we would buy it off you today? It's over. Avel Godel, deep, huge mourning. They're distributing sackcloth and ashes. Even misspake, they're even starting to eulogize each other. Sarah over here and David over there. They were such wonderful people. It's over. Jewish history's over. Maybe world history's going to be over. It's all gone. It was so desperate that on the 30th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, right, that's when the decree went out, 11 months before what was supposed to be the final solution. As it went out, in Shushan, the capital, Esther decides that people should fast. And Mordechai gets all the Jews to fast. They fast for 3 days, day and night. And according to at least one source in the Midrashim and the ancient rabbinic texts, that fast, if you just calculate the 13th day of Nisan, is 2 days before Pesach. So if you fast 3 nights, you're going to fast across Seder night. That means they didn't do Seder night that year. Maybe they sat down and talked about Egypt, but no matzah, no wine, none of that stuff. Right? You know, we have stories in the Warsaw Ghetto. I think it's Jack Eisner was one of the survivors of it, who was running through the last 1943, or the last few thousand Jews in the ghetto, and that was the night before the Nazis invaded to finish it all off. They'd already began the rebellion. And so he's running through on Seder night from bunker to bunker with whatever little meager, few little weapons they have to try to defend themselves with. And he comes across a bunch of old Jews having a Seder night in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943. The stories of Seder nights in camps where people didn't have mats and they drew on the wall and made a whole blessing. And the Kloisenberger Rebbe in 1944, I think it was, where he managed to actually get some flour and make it. There's crazy stories of Jews trying to keep Pesach and Seder in the craziest conditions. But in Shushan, the capital that year, no Seder night. Because Seder night commemorates miracle, because it commemorates redemption. That's not happening. Instead, we got this emergency of it's desperate. What are we going to do? It's all over. And 2 nights later, 2 mornings later, they wake up and there's this strange construction going up on top of Shushan, hanging from this is Haman. 1 second, he is the only man running the world at this point. How could he possibly be killed? Or what happened? Amazing thing. What a twist. How does it happen? And what is the answer? The answer is he ends up dying because he managed to commit the only possible crime he could commit. He basically can't commit a crime. He is the law. Except for one crime, treason. What's his treason? He made a decree to kill the Jews. He didn't realize that the queen was Jewish, so his decree, nobody else, his decree turns out to be an act of treason. Interesting. But who got a Jewish queen there in the first place? He did. When he says, get rid of the first one, put in a colleague who's better than her, without realizing it, he pulls one lever, puts a Jewish queen there, pulls the next lever, makes a decree to kill her, and effectively seals his own death sentence. He engineered it all. He didn't understand what his engineering was doing, but he was inadvertently creating his own destruction. And that's very profound, because what the Megillah is revealing is this. In every other Jewish festival, you have the natural, and God, let's say, overcomes the natural limits of something. Or you might have evil and good overcomes evil. And it shows that God can overcome a natural problem, an evil, whatever it is. In the Purim story, something dramatic happens that's not in any of those. Even evil in the short term can do horrific things. But in the long run, it can only destroy itself, and in doing so, reveal God. God is only revealed in the Purim story through Haman. Inadvertently, as I said before, not a hero, but inadvertently does what he's inadvertently, he destroys evil. Inadvertently, he reveals God. And when evil in the long run can only destroy itself and reveal God, it reveals what in the Kabbalistic text they talk about, or philosophical text drawing on them, talk about as ein od milvado. Ultimately, there's nothing but God. The deep engineering, the deep root driving all of history is such that whatever anyone chooses, you choose good, Hashem gets revealed. You choose evil, the evil gets destroyed and Hashem gets revealed. You choose to try to reveal God, God will get revealed. You choose to try to block the revelation of God, God will get revealed. You see that in the end, history is arcing towards somewhere that we cannot stop it arcing towards. And when even evil can only reveal God, it reveals nothing but Hashem. It's a deeper dimension of revelation than when good reveals God. And by the way, it drills into every single detail of the story. How does Haman get hung? Die, actually, so he gets hanged, right? On what? On these gallows. Who built the gallows that he gets hanged on? He built them. You see? He built them for Mordechai. But you see what's happening? His decree, he puts the Jewish queen, he builds the gallows. He may as well just have climbed on top of hanged himself. That would have been I guess that's more or less what he did. And then what did he do? He made it that the law can't be repealed. So he's got a law saying every Nazi should gather together to kill Jews on the 13th of Adar. Nobody can repeal that law. All they can do is put another law saying we should train the Jews to defend themselves and start to put the Persian army sitting there waiting. So if anyone is so fanatical about killing Jews and they still assemble on that day, instead of them succeeding in killing Jews, they'll be killed in the process. He basically got rid of the whole Nazi party. He destroyed all the leaders of the SS effectively. I mean, you think about it in terms of, he did all of that. That's an amazing achievement. By the time he's finished, the Jewish people are safe. The very next chapter, God is revealed. The very next chapter is we go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Like he almost brought Mashiach. That's an amazing concept. But what it's revealing is not just a metaphor, but a microcosm of the picture of history. That's what Purim is. It's the microcosm of the picture of history, that the evil itself in the short term could do horrific things, but in the long run must destroy itself and reveal God. And that could lead you to exactly the wrong idea. This, by the way, is what it means. Drinking is not meant to just be a wild behavioral thing. Nichnas yain, the wine enters, say the rabbis, yotzasoid, the secret comes out. So on a very simple level, that means, when people drink, a lot of their secrets come out. For most people, it would be better if the drink stayed out and the secret stayed in. But there's a deeper level. The rabbis speak in multiple layers. What they mean also is wine can alter the state of mind, and if you use it correctly, it can take us to the deep secret dimension of existence. On the superficial, we talk about there being 70 faces, whether it's 70 interpretations of Torah, 70 root languages, 70 this, 70 that. But what that means is the world appears to us in fragmentary form, lots of different things going on. But at its depth, all 70 are one. Are you familiar with the concept of gematria? That in Hebrew, each letter is also a number, and when you aggregate the total, you get kind of the numerical weight or the total. So the word yain, the wine that takes you from the 70 to the 1, not surprisingly, its gematria, its numerical total is 70. You see, it's telling you could go from the 70 and into the secret world. The Hebrew for the secret, soid, is also 70. Right? So you're going deep, deep, deep from the 70. And what do you see when you're in the 1? Ad de lo yada, till you cannot know bein ora Haman levarach Mordechai, cursing Haman and blessing Mordechai. Because whichever pathway you choose the pathway of Mordechai, the end is Hashem gets revealed. And you get blessed, Hashem gets revealed. You choose the pathway of Haman and it gets cursed, Hashem gets revealed. On Purim, that's where we're meant to get to. It's an incredibly deep place to be. The rest of the year, we can't see that, and we're not meant to. But on Purim, we are. And this is why, when all the other festivals are gone, Purim will remain, because Purim will be the story of all of history. Purim will be the incredible twist that shows us what history is going to be like in its final chapter 2, when something happens and the whole story now means something different. Now, you could say, okay, but does that mean then our choices don't matter? Who cares what we do? Hashem's going to get revealed anyway. We choose to reveal it, it'll get revealed. We choose not to. So what do we do? Right? We're just wasting our time over here. That's exactly the opposite of the Purim message. But the person who came close to asking this was Queen Esther herself. At the key moment when Mordechai says, please go and beg for the Jewish people to... She says, that's the most ridiculous request I've ever heard. Are you crazy? Do you not know Persian constitutional law? Anybody who walks across the threshold gets killed if they haven't been summoned. That includes me. Oh, you're just asking me to die. And what does Mordechai respond? He says, Esther, he says, don't think you're going to get away with all this. But he does, by the way, change. He says, effectively says, you're right. Bad idea. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You've got to do something. And the language he uses is this. He says, if you stay silent now, I want you to pause and hold the thought, especially those of you who've never read the Megillah and don't know what the next line says. Think about that for a moment. Imagine you're Mordechai. She's the only hope of the people, right? This is it. Esther, if you stay silent now, how would you finish that sentence? I'm imagining you'd say something like this. If you stay silent now, we're all going to be killed. If you stay silent, Jewish history is going to come to an end. The whole purpose God had in the world is going to fail if we are critical to delivering it, right? Who knows what? You just said something dramatic to motivate her. You said something that requires a bit of music to get him motivated, right? You just said something. Listen to what he says. If you stay silent now, which means we're going to be saved by somebody else. That's got to be the most unpersuasive speech in all of human history. Like, Esther, please go, save us, because if you don't, someone else will save us. So she says, Shkoyach, send the other person, I'll stay in the palace, I'll have sushi, and I'll say to him, what do you need to send me in for, risk my life over? And then he says something else, which seems like a total non sequitur. Ve'atu ve'savich tovedu, which means you and your ancestral home will be obliterated. One second, you just said we're all going to get saved. I'm the one who's going to die. What do you mean? Who knows if this isn't why you became queen? What are you talking about, Mordechai? Except this is exactly what we're talking about. We're so used to thinking of like almost not quite Jewish, almost Jewish, but not quite Jewish way, which is this. Basically, history could completely fail. Fall of human choice leads to disaster. God zaps in and does a miracle unconnected to any of us and brings about a future world. Or we live in this world, do good things, go into the world to come in some kind of afterlife and get reward. And that's it. That is not the Torah's view, and that's not Megillah's view. What Mordechai is saying is, Esther, do you realize the fact that it's going to work out tells you that we are living in a history that is being co-authored by God and man. God's bit is to ensure that no matter what choices we make in the narrative leading up to it, the final chapter will have an amazing twist, which will involve God's plan coming to fruition. It will involve the Jewish people surviving through history. It will involve his revelation happening and eventually the whole of the world coming together. And all these things, that's going to work out. But the meaning of the story, when you can pick up a book, I don't know, certain books that when we were kids, we used to read Agatha Christie, right? Like you always knew there's going to be a twist at the end and it's going to work out, right? But you didn't know what the twist is going to be. And that doesn't mean, oh, what a boring book. It makes no difference what anybody does because it's going to be twisted. What are you talking about? The story is going to be the story because of all the events that lead up to it. The people writing the chapters leading up to it are you and me and everybody else. We are writing the story. And it works like this. Every choice we make, when you realize it's all arcing there, you realize every choice we make is there. So if we choose to do good, even if the plan that we had completely fails, it will be in there. I'll give you a simple example that is the Purim mindset, okay? You're walking into an office that morning and you're feeling frustrated. And a part of you thinks, I should put a smile on and be nice to some people in the office. The other part of you thinks, nah, what difference does it make? It makes no difference anyway. I'm frustrated. I can't be bothered. I walk in scowling and unhappy. But then you say to yourself, do you know what? No. Let me just stop. Hashem's running the world, not me, right? Let me calm down. It's not such a big deal. It's my ego getting in the way. I've got, blah, 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 blah. Get into a good space of calm. I actually feel quite good now. Walk into the office with a big smile on my face, say good morning to this one here, good morning to that one there. And I'm just nice, right? You walk in and you're just being nice. And you walk up to 5 or 6 people and you're really nice to them. You say a compliment and you make this one feel good and you off to help this one. And suddenly the mood in the office has got better. 5 or 10 people are having a better day because of you, because your first 15 minutes there. And as far as you're concerned, you did that and you've forgotten that you did that 3 years ago, right? It was not particularly relevant. Not going to make it to your big biography. And then, like when you're rich, when you're famous and you've changed, nobody's going to notice you did that. But what you didn't notice is those 10 or 15 people, when changed, they had a better, you lifted their day. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, they behaved really nicely to everybody. They were on the phone with everybody that passed in the corridor. And about an hour or so later, there were 50 or 60 people having a better day because of you. 5 hours later, there were several hundred people in the world having a better day because of you. 3 weeks later, millions of people were having a better day somewhere because of you. Only a marginal difference, but at the edge, it made a difference. Someone somewhere 6 months later didn't jump off a roof. Someone somewhere who was about to get divorced went for marriage counseling. We don't even have a beginning of a clue where these things rippled across the world. What COVID taught us is you're about 7 or 8 weeks away from impacting 7 billion people, 12 weeks away. How long are you? 13 weeks. You're not far away from impacting all 7 billion people on the planet. If you're one handshake away or one sneeze away from 12 weeks of handshakes and sneezes away from 7 billion people, your smile goes that far too. Your angry face goes that far and your positive face goes that far. We impact the entire world in ways we don't even know. But God is taking that and it's arcing and rippling and moving through. And when we get to the final chapter, we'll see that actually changed history. Maybe it brought Mashiach indirectly somewhere down the line. That's what the Purim story is telling you. And every choice we make, if it's positive, it's going to be in there at the end. If it's negative, we choose to do something evil, that's something will have to be destroyed in us in order to get there at the end. Maybe because we do teshuvah and we repent for it and so we undo it. Or maybe we have to go through some undoing of it or whatever it is, some painful process. And the third option is we just walk away we write ourselves out of the chapter altogether. He says, Esther, you're right. My idea was a stupid idea. Don't go running across the gate if you don't want to. right? But you've got to do something because history's going to work. If I thought it could fail, I'd say, well, let's evaluate your probability of success here. If it fails, yeah, it's not high, so go and sit in a room. But Esther, forget what we think the outcome is going to be. We're not here deciding outcomes. God works out the outcomes. It will work out. We've got to change the story itself. We've got to do the inputs. We've got to care. And because it's going to work out, because you are sitting in the palace as the only Jew who can speak to the king, you've got to do something. Let's not forget the fact he mentions their ancestral home. Our great-great-great-great-grandfather, King Saul, made the whole mess in the first place because he kept alive out of mercy that Agag, who was the king who was trying to kill all the Jews. According to the next day, Agag does get killed, but in the meantime, he's had children and he's impregnated somebody, and that's going to leave the lineage of people who want to kill Jews in the world. Okay. There's history here. There's everything here. Can you not feel a sense that you're sitting in the palace right now? He says to her, you're sitting in the palace while you've got to do something. You've got to do something. I don't know what it is. Because if you don't, we will get saved. History will work out. But you and your ancestral home will be gone because you'll have written yourself out of that chapter forever. Out of the book forever. You've chosen to take no responsibility. That's the end of your story. And that is the power of Purim. The power of Purim is that once we see that everything is part of this narrative, everything, you choose good, it's all going to be there in the end. It's all part of the revelation of God in the end. That's exactly the reason to step forward and play our role. Because even if we fail, if it's good, we'll succeed. What that means is maybe she would walk across and get killed. And her plan would completely fail. But somebody might have been inspired by that, and somebody might have told that to their grandchildren. And in 17 generations' time, who knows how these impact? We're not controlling that part of the story. We're controlling the inputs, not the outputs. Do the right thing, and then the magic will happen. Even if we can't see it, we're not in control of the output. We're co-authoring. We're in control of the input, and doing the right thing always ripples across everywhere and always does these incredible things. And that really is the power of why it's called Purim. Because you see, every other day of the year celebrates a big festival, celebrate big people, big moments. Moshe does this one does that, God intervenes here. Purim is the story of all those people we think make no difference, and all those moments we think are meaningless. Purim says homon, randomness, meaninglessness. That's what I think the world is. And on Purim, what we do is we take all the things you think are meaningless, all the people you think don't make a difference, and all the moments you think don't matter, and we discover that behind the mask of history, they do. And so Purim will outlast every single other festival. Yom Kippur can only get close to the level of Purim is at, the level where the mask is pulled away, and for a moment we glimpse what it'll be like to be there at the end of history, where evil has only just revealed God as well, where everything looks completely different to how it looked along the way. And when we suddenly zoom in and see, oh my goodness, I played a starring role. I didn't think I was the great rabbi or the great Rebbetzin or the great philanthropist or the great this. I didn't think I was anything. And I suddenly see that really I was. And so God's name is not directly intervening, and God's name is the whole story. And the revelation of God's name is you and me and all the actions that we're doing. And that's the power of Purim. And when a person taps into that joy, there's nothing like it. And so for that day of the year, that's what we do. Whether we're going to use this tool or that tool, we get to the place where we see it's all the hand of Hashem, but it's all being delivered through our actions. And that changes the meaning of who we are. So everybody here, I'll stick around for questions. I know we're a bit out of time, but everybody here should have a really, really wonderful Purim, but in a really deep and beautiful way, so that the day we walk out of Purim, we're empowered, we're uplifted, and we're motivated to understand the power that lies in every little good thing that we do. We should live up to those good things, and we should live up to the redemption that Purim was. We should see it in the world speedily because the world needs it so badly. It should be very, very speedily our time. Everyone should have a wonderful Purim.